It's so funny. You were like, yeah, we were all pursuing other things. You had some character that did jazz or something.
This episode is just so much. I've been wanting to catch up with you for so long, and it feels like more catch up than the typical.
No, let's go back to your questions.
No.
First
I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hello, I'm Tim Barnes. You are the genre, and in every episode of this show, I ask someone about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts that they pursued, and how they feel about that first pursuit now. In this episode, I'm talking to my dear friend, Chrissy Shackelford. She's a writer for John Oliver's Last Week Tonight. And in fact, a couple years ago, I remember watching the Emmys and seeing her speak on behalf of the winning writers team. Here's a clip.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I should start off by saying this is not everyone who writes on the show. We were only allowed a small number to come, so the show sent the hottest writers, which I understand is kind of an oxymoron. But on behalf of everyone here and not here, we want to thank all of the departments at Last Week Tonight. They are so good at what they do. We want to thank our executive producers, Tim Carvel and Liz Stanton. We want to thank John, obviously. And we'd like to thank our producer, Kat Owens, who somehow does everything. And finally, we would like to dedicate this award to Adam Driver. He knows what he did. And we know what we'd like him to do. Thank you.
Was I jealous of that? No, not at all. I just remember watching that and thinking, wow, Chrissy's gone Hollywood. We met while staffed on the show Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas. She was a writer, I was a web producer, and we laughed a lot. Okay, one more thing about the Emmys. At some point during the show, they were cutting to the table, and she was like sitting, if not right next to Conan O'Brien, really close to Conan O'Brien, and there was all this footage of them laughing and her making him laugh and him making her laugh. Okay, that's when I got a little jealous, I'll admit it. Anyway, Chrissy is so much more than a writer who makes yucks about the news, and I'm excited for you to learn what those things are. So here's my conversation with Chrissy Shackelford.
Do I need to hit record before you do this?
On
or
your
is
phone?
It already just going?
It's already just going
phone,
here.
Yes. Okay, great. I didn't know. I see this button. I was unclear.
But you still go by Shackelford.
Yes, thank you. I am married, but I did not take my husband's last name. I still go by Shackelford, yeah.
Nice. Same here with my marriage. I'm just, the lone Barnes here. We're just two.
And does that hurt?
Connected islands. It doesn't hurt. No, not at all.
Good. Because my husband has a real issue with it. No, he's fine. But we do now have a child, and that child's last name is his last name, mainly because I like his last name better. Shackelford is, it doesn't roll off the tongue. It's actually, it sort of bing bongs off the tongue. Shackelford.
Yeah. Well, what are the origins of Shackelford?
Listeners should know Tim is furrowing his brow as if this was a very impressive question. I don't know what the origins of Shackelford are. I think like Scottish, maybe English. My sister did 23andMe, and it's just like all English and Scottish. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I have no connection.
I know that your genealogy means nothing to you. This is all fascinating stuff. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Sounds like the beginning of a gotcha interview. So I see here that your genealogy means nothing.
No, this is my my pitch to be the new Finding Your Roots guy. Like when they look for a new guy to look for the nooks and crannies of celebrity genealogy, I want to be that guy.
Yeah, you got to add a third name.
Yeah. Well, I have three. I have a middle name. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
What is it?
It's Renee.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Timothy Renee Barnes. So we met years ago for HBO.
2017.
Wow, 2017 for HBO late night docuseries called Why It Snacks Problem Areas. A lot of beautiful things came from that show. I think a lot of lifelong friendships at the end of the day were
I do
born
agree with that.
at that show. It's pretty incredible.
A lot of very smart, very funny, very nice people that they assembled in that large cacophonous.
Yeah, it was
insanely big office.
It's a very big office space. So this is a big deal in my life because I was the first TV show I ever worked for. I was a web producer. You were one of the staff writers, and all the writers and researchers, they had actual offices, basically full windows as doors, everything you could see through. And then I was
the height of horrible open office, like 2017, just awful open office concepts. And you, yes, were
the lone person sitting in between two, sitting in a vacant space, flanked by offices that I could see you all doing work in, and it felt like a cage almost. This is the one guy with the vaguest job title.
You were the web producer for a show that had like 7 months of pre-production, so we didn't even have a web presence for half the time. For like a majority of the time that we were there. And not only were you in this large empty space, but slowly you were in like a cube of desks. There were like 4 desks, and you had one of them, and all those desks had chairs. And then slowly, as the months go on, a chair would disappear. I'd be like, okay, weird. Then another chair would go. Then the desk was gone until there was just your desk
me.
And your chair and your desk. It was so sad. You had one tiny lamp on it. And at the end of the day, you turn off your lamp, put your laptop in your bag, like you were a Charlie Kaufman character. It was like if that Twitter account, Liminal Spaces, like that was what that was.
Yeah. So that was my first entry into television. And that was your first staff writing job, right?
Yeah, and my first television job too. It was like my first job. I was a tour guide right before that, and like a babysitter. I got to quit everything because I don't know about you, but I found out I got the job, and then we had to start like a week later.
Yeah. And how long had you been dreaming of television?
Dreaming of television. It's so funny because I loved TV. I still love TV. As a kid, probably would say like my favorite thing was watching TV, but and I'm very grateful for the job at Why It Snacks Problem Areas, but I don't think like children dream of working on a docuseries. So to me, it still was not like, to me, it was like, oh, I got my first comedy job. And that was like its own thing as adult Chrissy wanted. But this like dreaming of TV, I don't think it's like I walked into the soundstage of I Love Lucy and was like, whoa. Yeah. It was like I walked into a Brooklyn large office space. And now we're making a documentary, essentially.
Yeah, about very serious issues. And I think before that, you are a comedian. You were doing a lot of improv and character work. And were you like a part of like one of those story pirate type things?
Yeah, I was a part of, in fact, the Story Pirate.
The Story Pirates, yeah. I think that was the first time I heard of Story Pirates was when you mentioned that.
A great organization, so fun, similar to like a Problem Areas. A lot of amazing people that you just like meet and then you're friends with for a very long time. I was doing Story Pirates. I was doing, you're in the comedy world. You might have heard of the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater.
Yes. Yeah.
Was doing a lot of stuff there. And that was mainly my thing. I didn't do a lot of improv in New York. I mean, I like kind of did, but I wasn't ever actively pursuing that in New York. I was pursuing like sketch and character stuff. And I still did that at Problem Areas. I remember I would have to leave sometimes to go to a sketch. I had to leave at the ungodly hour of 6 p.m. on the dot sometimes. And that was I was like, oh, I got to get out of here for sketch rehearsal.
How'd you get into that stuff though? Because I started off doing like stand up, and that was like a very specific type of thing. But I feel like people who do character work, it is part of like a larger, like, I want to enter Hollywood, baby, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, are we getting into what was your first craft?
Maybe I can't ask the first question. What was the first genre that influenced you as a kid?
No, I'll do the abridged answer to your question. I'll do it really quick. Is that there were a lot of things that got me to comedy that would go back to first inspired. But let's just say within comedy, it started with improv, as many people do, in Austin, and then moved to New York because I wanted to pursue comedy. And then I think improv takes a lot of freaking hustle. And I was getting like not into hustling for something that was so ephemeral.
Yes.
And I took a character writing class at UCB, and that was really nice because I was like, oh, I can write something for myself to perform. And then I also like, I have it. So like, not only am I creating my own stage time, but then I can also like perfect it and I can do it over and over again. And the hard part I always found with improv and in sketch, you know, being in your 20s in New York, is it's like, I got to wrangle a bunch of people who have different kinds of day jobs. I got to get their schedule so we can all do a rehearsal at the same time. But with character work, it was like, all I really need is me and like a friend or a coach to like watch me do this and give me notes. And it was a lot more easier for me to control, like doing stuff more, because I just needed to be in control of my own schedule and not like 10 other people's schedule.
So the end goal of character work, is it getting cast on a show or a movie or a play?
I wanted to be on SNL, Tim. Tim, I wanted to be on SNL, and I have failed at that goal.
Wow. See, that's what, when I moved to Chicago, it was like I took some sketch writing classes at Second City, and I did a little bit of improv, and I wasn't very good at it. And I realized I cared more about stand-up and writing. But being at Second City at a school where everyone has the goal of being on one television show really freaked me out.
Yeah. Because were you just like, I guess that's what I should be wanting?
No, it was truly very disturbing to me, because first, like, a school set up for comedy was the antithesis of why I wanted to pursue comedy. And
1000%.
Then it was almost like, it's not, it's weird. The energy, the social climbing of it all for one man who works at 30 Rock, who can kind of make or break your, it's very weird.
It's very weird. And yet that is what I want. And I really bought into the, if I do all these things, I will get there. And brag, I did showcase for them twice. I just never made it to the, like, even if I were ever to become actually famous, they wouldn't even be like, and this person auditioned for us. I didn't even make it to the little stage where they show the tapes. I did like a showcase at UCB for them twice, which I am grateful for. I would not have gotten that if I didn't do stuff at UCB. But then also, like, the school aspect of UCB, I think really got into my head kind of really close to the pandemic. And I was already sort of rattled. And then the pandemic happened. And I was listening to your episode with Anna, which is really good. And you were talking about how you haven't really gone up much post-pandemic, or like, you know, since shutdowns and whatnot. And kind of same. And I don't know what that is. I mean, I left New York a little bit ago, but still I'm like, I don't know what that is. The, like, not finding the joy in it as much as I did beforehand.
Certain parts of life are just more serious than they were before.
Yeah.
I think that might be part of it. And right now you're writing for a show that dives into that seriousness every single week.
Yeah, I think also one part of it is I was getting a little burnt out on how clinical things were starting to feel with my performance. And I think that was a little bit of the UCB aspect that I let get into my head, and less of like, oh, remember when it was just fun to do this? I was starting not to feel that way. But then also during the pandemic, all you could do was stay at home and watch TV.
Yeah.
And that was so fun for me. I did. I was like, wait, to go out and do a show at 9 p.m. when I could just be at home, like watching 4 hours of TV. That's so fun.
You kind of atrophy from that element of like, I really would go on the train for like 3 hours just to go from one place to the next. Yeah. Is socializing that worth it? So now I think is a good time to ask the first question, which is, what's the first genre that called out to you as a child? I feel like I'm getting a sense of what that is.
Yeah. And this is all day. I was thinking, Tim, this is too hard of a question. Because my head, I went back and read your email. I had read the first question or made the first question something different in my head. I had read it as, what was the first genre that thrilled you as a child? So all day. And I was like, of course,
just
Tim
would
phrase it that way. All day I was thinking, like, what genre thrilled me? And then I was going back like 15 minutes before to just read over the instructions. And it was like, oh, inspired. So I really was having an existential moment being like, what thrilled me? Does anything thrill me? What thrills me now? But so in terms of like what I think the first thing, and thinking of thrilled, the first thing that I remember being like, whoa, things that I love just feel like that were inherent to me is I Love Lucy. Like I loved that as a child. I loved the best of SNL DVDs. I don't know why we had like so many of them in my house, and I watched them over and over, specifically the best of DVDs. But the thing I remember like thrilling me in a way of like, oh, I've not seen that, and that's exciting, honestly, is The Amanda Show.
Wow. Yeah. I understand.
Loved The Amanda Show. I mean, I'm so jealous that you got to write on the All That reboot. I remember when you got that, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. The best job I've ever had. Yeah.
That's incredible. And I love that for you. That's like so cool. But yeah, I remember The Amanda Show, like just really, I remember just feeling like I've never seen anything like this. And I don't think I've seen anything like it again.
Yeah.
Like I've obviously seen the Carol Burnett Show and like things that it's sort of riffing on, but not as a teen, or not with a tween teen at the center. So that, but also when it's like first inspired you as a child, I was a dancer as a kid. I did ballet and like jazz, but I was like big time dancer until I was like 13 years old, and then I quit, but then I picked it back up in college.
Okay. Who was buying the SNL DVDs?
My brother. I have an older brother and an older sister, and my older brother was really into he's a musician, but he was really into comedy stuff. So he would often just like either bring home DVDs on his own, or he would leave me DVDs specifically to be like, hey, watch this. I do like sort of credit him a lot with my sense of humor, because I think he was very invested in making sure I became funny. So I just watched a lot of like comedies because of him. But then I Love Lucy was my mom. My mom loved I Love Lucy. And so we watched I Love Lucy all the time together.
There's something about the laughter that you hear in early SNL episodes and I Love Lucy episodes where it's so real. This is not stock laughter, and it feels like they really captured something. And I'm still like addicted to that. I've been watching Taxi for the first time. And what I love about Taxi, it's such a good show, but you can even hear the lulls. And I like that. Now everything is so like sweetened and polished where like you want to avoid any chance for that. But it makes it so like
true.
Life affirming when you feel like you're really capturing something when you allow the audience to feel like a human breathing entity.
Yeah. The things that are just like humorous lines.
Yeah.
Don't get like a huge laugh. They just are like, but then the jokes really hit. Like there's the famous egg squash or egg smash in I Love Lucy that I think maybe still holds the record for the longest studio audience laughter. Mm-hmm. And just to watch her just kind of like live in it, like have to be, it's like, and you've known that feeling on stage. If you've done stage sketch or whatever, that you're like, oh, I have to wait till the audience dies down. But to like watch that on TV, that they filmed and taped. Do you hear a child screaming?
I heard a child. Yeah.
I'm in the quietest room of my house still.
That's totally fine.
And I apologize.
How old is your child?
She is about to be 5 months old.
5 months. How does motherhood feel?
It feels amazing. It feels great. I do love it. I don't want to get sincere on Maine, but I do love it. It is feels so right and just perfect for me, and I'm really loving it.
And you're back home in Texas now? Like you're back, is that where you are? Okay.
I am in Austin, Texas. She will stop crying in a moment. My husband's warming up a bottle.
That's totally
for
fine.
her,
It's
and
not.
that's
It's
why
not.
she's crying.
It's not too loud. Yeah. But I'm interested in this full circle that you have now. Like, does that feel pretty nice, or do you kind of miss New York?
I miss New York a lot. I think I was just getting, we left in like September 2020. Our lease was up. It was, height of the pandemic. We did not even know when vaccines were coming out. And so we thought, we're not going to renew this lease. We put all of our stuff in storage thinking we'd be back like in 3-6 months whenever vaccines were back and like our jobs were opening back up. And then that just like kept getting pushed. Our jobs kept staying remote, and we would go back to New York for like short little snippets. And once you are out of the daily grind of New York, it is very hard to get back into it. Things like, oh, I can't just buy groceries and put a ton of them in my car and like come home, and like doing laundry is way harder. Like, I know it's so silly, but it's like, I think we were both just tired. We were like, oh, it's so nice that things aren't as difficult.
Yeah.
So we always thought that coming back to Austin was kind of like a temporary situation. And we still sort of think that we're not going to stay here forever, but we'll probably go to LA next.
Okay.
Probably not back to New York unless a specific job takes either one of us back there. But it's been nice. It's been really nice. I think it's, been good for my mental health.
That's great.
I think I became, especially the times at problem areas, I was in a weird state. I was really feeling
we
like
all were. I mean, seriously, like the level of like strange circumstances that led us all to that job. I mean, that lead us into comedy. No one is doing great.
Yeah, and I think it felt really hard to like have a on paper like official job, like a thing that should feel like an end goal, and it really did, like, not because of the job, just like like there is no end. I just felt really in the rat race constantly, and I think that was very bad for my head.
We were all still chasing other things in a way. Like I remember you were still auditioning for certain things. You showed me that character that's that, a parody of the woman who does jazz versions of pop songs or something like that.
Oh my gosh, my rockabilly character. I love her. Vintage Lisa. Vintage Lisa, yeah. She does 1950 styles covers of rap songs. She's like, yeah. It's so funny. You were like, yeah, we were all pursuing other things. You had some character that did jazz or something.
This episode is just so much. I've been wanting to catch up with you for so long, and it feels like more catch up than the typical.
No, let's go back to your questions.
No, I'm just pointing that out so what is it like growing up in Texas, and how far-fetched is it to dream of something like SNL and that kind of thing?
Oh, well, okay. This will actually be a good segue into maybe your topics at hand, which is that as a kid, I always wanted to be on SNL, or I always wanted to be Lucille Ball. I wanted to be like funny, or Amanda Bynes. It's a great joke in The Office when someone says, like, mentions a famous comedian. I can't remember who. And Michael Scott goes, who? And someone goes, a comedian, like Amanda Bynes. And I'm like, oh, I love her. But to me, I'm like, Amanda Bynes was a really great comedian.
She's fantastic. Yeah.
Always wanted to do that. But then I pursued like dancing and acting. And so I went to college for acting, and my school did like dramatic acting in like new plays, new play development, things like that. I took a comedic acting class in the last semester, which was taught by the oldest man alive, who I think is still living, but he was all about like farcical acting. Like we watched these tapes of repetition, like have some sort of physical repetition, do a funny voice, and like, all these things that you can add to a
Turns
scene.
out the guy was claymation somehow.
It's funny as he did have a very lumpy head. As if a claymaker did put his fingers in it. So not far off. A whole session one day was just about double takes and triple takes. Like how to like
So he really was teaching you how to be Lucille Ball in a way. That's kind of like perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so fun. And I really loved that class. And I remember talking to one of the grad directors in college one night at a bar after a play, and then being like, what are you doing after graduation? And I was like, I don't know. Like, a lot of people from my school either moved to like New York or LA or Chicago. Chicago was like a big place people moved. And I was like, I don't know. People are saying Chicago, there's a great regional theater scene there. But I'm thinking New York. But also, I've always wanted to be on SNL, but I don't know how people even do that. That's like not a real job. And this grad director had lived in Chicago before they came to UT, and they were like, you should definitely go to Chicago. That is a real job. Like, that's a thing people do. That's a career path. And until then, I had not fully even thought of that as a career path. I thought if I were to move somewhere, I would just try to do theater. I would just try to do like acting and plays and stuff like that. And then I started taking improv classes in Austin my last semester of senior year. So like growing up, no, I wanted to be on SNL, but I don't think I ever really thought that that was like a thing that could, I don't know why actual just like acting, like theater acting felt more attainable, which is like way, I was like, oh, well, I can't be on SNL, but Broadway, of course. So probably until I was like 22, did I not think that it could be something that could happen.
And were your parents pretty supportive of all this? I mean, your brother's a musician and you were doing dance and stuff. It feels like possibly. Or did they want you to do something a little more practical?
No, I was listening to your episode with Anna, and I was thinking like, were my parents supportive? They're supportive in the sense that they were never like, don't do that. And my mom liked seeing all my theater shows in high school and college, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess they were supportive. If I may speak bluntly, I was the last child, and my parents went through a pretty messy divorce when I was in like middle high school. So I just don't think they had the time or the energy to be supportive or not supportive of the last kid. There was like too much going on. So no, I mean like, yes, but also, I don't know. They weren't like, yes, I guess, yes.
I feel like you just mentioned the good stuff for me, but the complex stuff for you. This divorce element of this parental divorce period of your life. How important did comedy become for you then? I feel like I'm turning into Jiminy Glick.
You are. You're really seeing something that actually, I would actually credit that time as being pretty formative for me comedically.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre will be right back after the break. You Are the Genre is an independently produced podcast, which means I do it for the love of great conversation and the enjoyment of bringing those conversations to you. If you'd like to support the show, you can do a few things. You can rate and review it wherever you're listening to it, and you can also subscribe to the newsletter. There's a link to it in the show notes and at youarethegenre.com. If you go for the free subscription, you get updates on episodes and some of the other things going on in my life. But if you upgrade to paid, you get even fresher episodes a week ahead of their public release, plus so much more. So here's the thing. I typically use this break to talk about something that I've simply been enjoying. And one of those things is the 70s sitcom Taxi. Taxi. What a show. I don't recall what exactly made me start watching it, but I'm so glad that I did. Because beyond reminding me of a better time for comedy and a better time for televised comedy, I found that the show Taxi highlights something that I think every creative person can and should keep in mind right now. Because yes, all of our favorite characters on the show are taxi drivers, but none of them are defined by the job title. Almost all of them have an outside creative pursuit. There's a boxer, there's an actor. And I think that if you're a creative person like myself, a writer, a sketch artist, a set designer. Perhaps you're fleeing LA right now because of the lack of work. I hope that you keep a little bit of that taxi spirit in whatever you're doing. You are not defined by the work that you do. You are defined by the work that you do outside of that work that you actually care about. And there's always a way to keep that nugget of joy alive. One more thing. On August 14th, I'm hosting a show at the Queens Public Library called Banned Book Comedy. It's a variety show extravaganza that'll mix late night stand-up and music in celebration of the First Amendment, intellectual freedom, and the right and pleasure to read. This interactive show will simultaneously hit your funny bone and stimulate your mind. So if you're in New York, consider going to the Queens Public Library August 14th. So yeah, I guess watch Taxi and consider subscribing to my newsletter. Get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we?
My parents were going through a pretty messy divorce. My sister was in... This was before they were going through a divorce. I didn't know a divorce was coming. My sister had just gotten married to someone who was in the army. He was stationed in Germany. She was pregnant. So she was like pregnant, about to give birth in Germany. So my mom went to go stay with her and help her. And I was just in the house with my dad and sometimes my brother. My brother was like 19 at the time. So he was kind of in and out. And my dad worked a lot. So it was a very lonely time for me as a child, tween, whatever, but I watched so much stuff. I watched Conan all the time. They used to air Conan episodes on Comedy Central during the day at like 3 p.m.
And SNL, yeah.
And old SNLs. I would watch that all the time. Reno 911. I loved Comedy Central. It is so hard to see what has happened to it, kind of, but like I watched anything that was on Comedy Central. Conan, SNL, Reno 911, and then one day I was flipping through damn channels on the TV guide, the like guide channel that would come up. And on HBO, we had it, brag. It said a show called The Comeback starring Lisa Kudrow.
Yes, such a good show.
All I knew about Lisa Kudrow was that she was on Friends, and I loved her on Friends. And I said, why don't I try this? I was 15 at the time. I said, why don't I just watch this? And that, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. I think that is one of the best performances, comedically or dramatically, I've ever seen. And I got really into The Comeback as like a teenager.
It's always great when you see those kind of shows or anything at that age, because part of the excitement is that you realize, like, I like the show in general. I like this character in the show. Did you see anything in the character that you wanted to be as well? Even though it's a very flawed character, was there an element of that you like, I want to be in these situations somehow?
Oh, interesting. No, I was very aware that it was Lisa Kudrow doing a character, and I wanted to be doing that character.
Oh,
like, I would watch it and be like, I want to be playing Valerie Cherish. Like, she's doing such a fun job. It's such a fun character she's made. I want to do that too.
Yeah, because I think I would see stuff like that and be like, I just want to be in, like, I realized recently that I've achieved my ultimate goal, which is just to be in the industry enough to be able to just small talk with people and learn weird inside things about you know what I mean? Like, that is just the sweet spot. Yeah.
Yes. In that sense, I mean, I loved the show Entourage, even though I shouldn't, for that very reason, because it felt like it was kind of close to Hollywood.
Yeah. Just by watching this, you're suddenly in on, like...
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So by pursuing acting, do you feel like you were kind of masking your actual goal, that SNL aspiration?
A little bit, but it's so funny now that I didn't reach that goal, and like will not, because I'm not actively pursuing that anymore. But I am now like, whoa, was comedy masking the fact that I kind of just want to do a play? Like, I really loved doing theater. Like, I love doing scene study. I'm like, I want to get back into an acting class. Like, I love doing that. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like, was theater masking my want for SNL, but now was SNL masking my want for just to act?
Yeah. And what do you get out of acting? Is it just like this sort of sense of pure connection with the written words, your performance, and the audience?
You know what it is? I I feel very controlled all the time, or like I like to be in control of my situations. Like I think that's why I like writing. Like I like to, like be very exacting. But then when I'm acting or when I was doing improv or even doing characters, I loved feeling like I have to be in this moment right now. And even though I've prepared and like I know what the words are, things change and I feel like I connect to a part of myself that I don't let out often, which is just like instinctual. Like whatever is happening in this moment and I'm very present right here. And I always really liked that. It's the one time that I feel like I'm not in my head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling. That's great. Thinking about a very surreal, magical, and jealousy-filled moment for me. You said you were jealous of me for writing for all that. I was jealous when I saw you at the Emmys, making Conan O'Brien laugh, because I love Conan.
I know. It's like the most amazing moment of my life. I told my husband after that happened, I was like, and that 100%, that was the best night of my life, more than our wedding. And I meant it now. Like, obviously, it's the birth of my daughter. That was like the best day of my life. But second best is the Emmys. And like talking to Conan, and he was so nice, and he was so funny, and he was so drunk. And it was just like, it was so amazing. It was like exactly, it's one of those things like, don't meet your heroes. And it was like, actually meet this hero. Like, he was great to me, and it was so fun. But similarly, that speech, I wrote that and I practiced it so much, but then I got that same feeling of just like, and now I just get to be on stage and perform it. Like and it was so small. It was 40 seconds. That's all I had, but it was like kind of the most performance I had since before the pandemic. And I was like, I feel alive. Like I feel alive having people watching me and just knowing like, you have to do it. Like there's no second, you can't go back and do a second draft. Like you are doing this now.
Yeah, there's nothing like that adrenaline and those endorphins. And I think what's beautiful about that moment is it was a lucky moment because this was an end of a certain era of television with him like leaving the official late night TV world. Now he's doing what I do.
Podcasting. He's got the show on Max.
I know. He's got the Max show. But that was like the exact cutoff of when you could meet that Conan O'Brien. In a way, he's still the same Conan O'Brien, but the Conan O'Brien who is on a certain type of television.
Yeah. It was really great. I have to tell you the funniest thing you said, and I did listen to your episode. You know, you bleep out the curse words, and I had accidentally already cursed, but I'm going to have to use another curse to get the bleep. I know you bleep them live. Finger ready. I was in conversation with Conan O'Brien, and then Jason Sudeikis comes up to talk to him, to Conan. He stands up, hugs him. They have a little quick moment. Go back. Conan sits back down, comes back into conversation with me, and says, I just told Jason Sudeikis to go himself. Which was just at that moment, like the funniest thing you could have said, because that Emmys was the first Ted Lasso Emmys where they were winning everything. And Jason Sudeikis' public persona was very like, this was pre Olivia Wilde drama. It was like, this is Hollywood's nice guy. He's the nicest guy in TV. Jason Sudeikis. He's Ted Lasso. Conan would be like, I just told him to go himself. It's so funny.
Is that a moment where you think about your childhood self? Suddenly you're on television. Suddenly you're talking to the guy that you used to watch. You found on Comedy Central.
1000% of my friend from high school, Alex, who we used to call each other on Saturday nights and watch the first half hour of Mad TV, because in Central Time, Mad TV came on at 10 p.m., but then Saturday Night Live started at 10:30. Mad TV was 10 p.m. to 11, and then Saturday Night Live was 10:30 to midnight. So we would call each other. We would watch the first half hour of Mad TV, then we'd both switch over to Saturday Night Live and just like talk to each other on the phone as we watched it. And she knew I loved Conan and everything, things like that. After the Emmys happened, she was like, I wish I could go back and tell high school Chrissy, like, that is going to happen. Like, you're going to win an Emmy, and then you're going to like talk to Conan. And I'm like, I know.
It's incredible. But there's something to even what you're describing about that dynamic with your friend it's weird that that's just kind of a bygone thing. Nothing is time stamped anymore. No one watches anything like at a specific time anymore. And I also wonder like how that similar thing of like my brother brought home DVDs, or I used to watch Saturday Night Live, or it feels like no one's watching things in that way anymore. And it makes me wonder, do younger people even have the goal of SNL in the same way that multiple generations of people had?
I have no idea. That is a great question. I would love to know, but I think you're getting at something. Everything that I've brought up is like, it was either found or I had to watch it at a certain time. Like the DVDs were given to me by someone, or like I Love Lucy. I was just watching that on Nick at Night. And I remember they used to have summer block parties on Nick at Night where each night was a different show and of the week. So like, it's like Monday nights, I Love Lucy. Tuesdays, it's all Gilligan's Island. And I would get so excited on the I Love Lucy night. Like, I have to watch this. Not like had plans. I was a child, and the comeback was just me finding that on TV.
Yeah.
But in a way, I'm sure this generation, look at us talking about the kids coming up. I'm sure they're going to have a similar thing where they're just like scrolling on the 5,000 streaming services and find some random show that they love that becomes really influential to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at that cutoff where I cannot understand the workflow, the workflow of that kind of thing. Even I was like, how does everyone know about this one TikTok? The level, the process at which that happens. I guess sometimes it's like it's naturally bubbling up on the internet, and at some point, someone in a suit is talking about it on Good Morning America, and that's how it.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I had a recent moment with this, which I saw these tweets about Hawk Tuah girl, and I was like, I think I've been a little, disconnected from the internet, being a mom now, and I'm like, I asked my husband, like, who is Hawk Tuah girl? What is this? I felt so old, and then I had to like Google Hawk Tuah girl, and I felt crazy. I felt crazy.
Yeah.
And then I had to read a write-up about a video.
Yeah, and nothing.
Okay.
They're like these little some of these things that go viral are so nuanced, such nuanced little glimpses. It's not even character work, which you do so well. It's like it's like a one facial expression or something. And then you feel crazy trying to explain a TikTok that made you laugh because it's such a minute element of the human experience, more minute than anything Jerry Seinfeld would ever make a bit about.
It does. It makes you feel really psycho to talking to anyone who explaining something you found funny on the internet to someone who hasn't seen it. It definitely, speaking of claymation, it makes you feel like that moment in Parks and Rec when Adam Scott is unemployed and he's like, could a depressed person do this? Like, that's what makes you because you start explaining it like it's the most important thing that's happened to you. But it's nothing.
Yeah, then you get frustrated. So you haven't seen it? You're like...
Okay, well, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, so things are links. They're not DVDs anymore. I'll stop talking like an old person. But so now you are, how long have you been writing at Last Week Tonight?
I've been there. This is my 5th season, but my 4th year. I came in on like the middle of a season.
Okay. So you are a well-seasoned late night news writer.
Yes, I'm a late night news writer.
I mean, late night in the sense that it's more about what do we call this? It's not.
I don't know.
It's not.
I don't know. I still don't know what we call this genre.
Yeah,
and Emmys don't either.
Yeah.
I still don't know what we call this genre. Comedy journalism, I don't like that.
Yeah.
News-based comedy feels even grosser to say. Long-form late night, maybe that's something. I don't know.
Have you reached an element of peace with this? Is this something that sometimes you look at and you're like, well, this was not ever anywhere on my dream chart?
Yeah, this was never anywhere on my dream chart, but I do love this job. I think part of it was just living in New York, the late night. That's what the jobs were. So like when I got an agent, that's what they were sending me. Is like, here's another packet for a late night show. Here's a packet for James Corden. Like, okay. I guess I'll watch some monologues. think we both at the same time were doing like a Colbert packet, and I remember writing some sort of Crocs joke, and even in my head being like, what am I doing?
Yeah, and those packets, like, they're like half jokes and half math equation, the way you have to format. The way you have to format anything for even last week tonight. They're like GFX, OTS.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm a pro at that now. I know how to write an element in a bracket.
It's like a beautiful mind.
But I do think part of that in the, like, you know, to go back to the theme of your podcast, is it was never anywhere on the goal board. But I think for me, I just sort of follow the momentum of what's happening. And sometimes I have to regroup and be like, hey, you followed momentum to this place. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, it's just like, yeah, writing is like where the momentum is right now, and like where I tend to spend most of my time, even like not at Last Week Tonight. I like write a lot on my own stuff on the weekends and things like that. And that is just, I've become at peace with that of like, hey, you're not really like putting the foot on the pedal for the acting stuff. And I'm like, well, it's just not right. It's just not where it is right now. And I am hopeful that it will get back to there, but that's just not where I'm vibing with in this moment.
I mean, how much have things changed in terms of the way that it used to function at Last Week Tonight, and now where it's pretty much remote, it sounds like? Was it once the scenario where you could, in a room, kind of pitch something in a way that resembled, you know, some of the things you do on stage, like some physicality? Or is it now just like mostly like words send, words come back, you alter the words?
I mean, I've only worked there in a remote fashion. I got that job in May 2020, so I don't know. I don't know how it was before the pandemic. I don't know. I still love to be a charming delight on a Zoom call. That's still sort of like, you know, gets my juices flowing. I do love to be charismatic on a call. But I would not call that acting.
Yeah. So, yeah, was that hard at first?
No, it's not, because I think I see these things as like separate skills, and when they like work together, that is great. Like I pitched a show last year, and that I loved because I got to write the pitch and then I got to do the pitch, and the pitch felt like performing, and it felt like all my skills in one. But when the skills are like bifurcated like that, it's not upsetting I'm like, oh, I'm just like doing the writing part now, and that's cool. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. Does it bother you?
No. I mean, I do miss elements of stand-up, but I am pretty content, and like I want to focus on being a writer, and I'll only act when I can kind of be myself, basically. And for some reason, people still want me to act and stuff every now and then.
That's great.
And I'll do it. It feels like you must see something in me, and I believe that. So I will do this for you. I think
part of it too is like some parts of acting and performing are so degrading.
There really is. It really is.
You just kind of reach, or for me, I just like reached a point where it's like, hey, let's not put yourself through that. You know, like if you're gonna do it, like do it on your own terms, do it in a way that feels fun for you.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do somebody's like random show that is not gonna like fulfill you. You don't gotta do it. Whereas like in my 20s, I'd be like, I have to do that. And actually I have to do that. Because it will get me to a next place. And then I'll go home and order shitty food at 2 a.m. after I've been out all night. And it's just like, oh, I ate like a monster. I ate gross diner food because I'm tired from degrading myself in a basement comedy show that I thought I had to do for a networking opportunity.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like,
bitter. Like bitter at myself for putting myself through that for so long.
Yeah, it was. I never was good at the considering the networking element of it, but I do feel like the improv and sketch and character world, you think about a casting director in the audience more than stand-ups, I feel like.
I didn't even think about, I felt like, oh, these people who are my peers, if I don't do this show, they'll never ask me to do another show. If I
Oh, yeah.
say no to this, I I wish I thought of it like casting directors were in the audience. It was more shame-based that I thought these people aren't going to want to be my like comedy friend if I don't do this.
It is like a strange circle of trying to constantly prove that you are funny and on the level of funny all the time. And once you get some distance from it, and once like younger comedians kind of emerge from the sewers,
Like the Ninja Turtles.
yeah, it does, especially like post pandemic. Like, where did they all come from? It's like a. And I had this thing. I've had this thing before I left Chicago, and just in general now, where it's like, oh, I will have to kind of be known and introduce myself for the rest of my life if I stay in that sort of cycle. I
What
will
do you mean?
constantly have to be around enough for the younger comics coming out of the sewers to know and potentially respect me.
Yes.
And then
1000%. You do so much to a point where you're like, I feel like I'm known in this community. I feel like people, if I introduce myself, to be like, oh, Chrissy, I've heard of you. You do sketch at UCB, or you're on Characters Welcome or something. But you have to keep doing it. There's no like, you've never reached a plateau.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, exactly what you're saying. All these young people, they don't care who you are. And I think that's good. They shouldn't.
It's good. Yeah. Now that like a couple of years have gone by, I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi in that first Star Wars movie, where it's like, I wonder if he means old Ben Kenobi, just like this hermit who lives.
And that is simply over my head. Old Ben Kenobi? Is that a real line from Star Wars?
That's a real line,
that a joke?
No, it's one of the funniest lines ever. But Luke Skywalker, C-3PO, and R2-D2, they come with a message that has to go to someone named Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke finds a message, and then when talking to his aunt and uncle who raised him, say, there's a message about an Obi-Wan Kenobi. I wonder if they mean old Ben Kenobi who lives.
Wait, really? That's a great joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's not delivered as a joke, but it just means that this hermit who dedicated his life to watching over Luke Skywalker used the code name Ben Kenobi instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he kept his last name, well known.
Wait, I'm getting confused. Is Obi-Wan Kenobi old Ben Kenobi?
Yes.
Oh, see, I thought the joke was there's actually just another guy named Ben Kenobi. And he is old. And they like cut to just an old guy who keeps getting Obi-Wan Kenobi's mail. And I was like, that's a great joke.
That's what it should have been. That's why you're a writer.
That's why I'm a comedy writer.
Well, I feel like we kind of covered the last question a bit, which is, what's your relationship with that first craft that you pursued now? You said the first craft was kind of serious acting, basically.
Yeah, like seriously, in college, I would say first I was a dancer. But that, I don't know, I didn't like seriously pursue that. That was just like something I did as a kid. But it was a big part of my personality back then. Serious acting? Yeah, my position with that is like I still want to do it. Like if I get an audition or a self-tape, I still like to do them, and it feels like a fun. I don't like all the setup, I gotta tell you that. I don't like putting up a big blue screen behind me. That sucks. And then I see all these tapes from like, watch the tapes of these people, and they're in a shitty room in a shitty background, and I'm like, so I don't need to be making this look professional. But I still would love to do more of that. That's my relationship with it.
Nice. And it seems like you're actively pursuing that, and you seem to have a good balance of everything right now. Do you feel that way?
No, I don't. I feel like I'm very heavy on the writing right now. I think I've come to a good emotional place where I'm not mad at myself anymore for not being like full throttle in acting as well. And just knowing like, this is the season of my life that I'm like just really focused on the writing stuff because that's feeling fun and good. And I'll find myself back going full throttle at acting at a later time.
Nice. And the shows that you pitch, are they shows that would star or feature you in some way?
No. Like there's bit parts that I'm like, I'd like to play that bit part, but I've been writing a lot of like pilots and like coming up with all these shows and things, and all these too. And the leads could never be me. Like just very disparate ages and things like that, which is interesting because once the like all Tina Fey of it all came out back then, I thought, oh, maybe that will be my path. Like I'll be on SNL and then I'll be like a woman who writes and creates and show runs and stars in her own show. And I still want to like write and create a show, and I would love to star in one, but I just haven't. I don't find anything about myself inherently interesting. Like, I don't know. I'm like, do I want to see a show about a woman like me? Kind of no. And the characters that I like that I would have played on stage usually tended to be like older or younger than my current age. So that's what I write for. And I don't think that I would play that. But I do think that is interesting, and I should deal with in therapy that I don't write things that I would star in.
I think that's kind of good. I feel like on some occasion I've been semi pressured to write something that I would be the lead in, and I think it's healthy when it's not the case. I think that's better in some ways. So
it's easier to divorce yourself from the characters in that way if you're not like, and I will play this role. Yeah. And this is me. And also when you're pitching it, because it's like, what if the executives are like, we don't find that character very likable? And it's like, well, it is me, actually. Like, thank you. We don't find her likable or hot.
Yeah. I don't think any human being would do something like that. It's like, I did. I did. Well, this has been great.
It's been great. It's been a joy.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
I think we covered it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I mean these are your questions. Do you think I nailed it?
I think so. Yeah.
I really loved your episode with Anna. Do you ever listen to a podcast and you're like, oh, that you're about to go on, and you're like, oh, I'd just like to hop into that conversation I just listened to?
That episode was sort of like lightning in a bottle.
And I just found so many things that she talked about like really relatable.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about them too.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't just do her episode. I'm not her.
Well, you can always record and then add it on your own. So you can make yourself, anyone listening to this podcast, you can play it in your headphones and press record on GarageBand and then layer them on top of each other so that you are a part of the show. And if you do that, please send it to me. I would like to hear your inserted insights as if you were as if you just approached a table at a restaurant and joined in. I would like to hear that. So please, and if you do that, I will add it into the feed.
That's what I was about to say. I'll do it and I'll make it my own podcast feed. It's called I Am the Genre.
Yeah. For every single episode.
Yeah.
It's just
I just love being part of the conversation.
Yeah. So look forward to the episode with me, Roy Wood Jr., and Chrissy Shackelford. The world.
I have a lot of thoughts about White House Correspondents' Dinner.
All right. Well, bye. And that's the show. Big thanks to Chrissy Shackelford for joining me. For more information about her, go to ChrissyShack.com. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Next episode, filmmaker Chris Bell joins me on the show. If you become a paid subscriber to my newsletter, you can listen to that a week ahead of the normies. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do? I'd like to know the things. Let's specifically.